Now that you have understood the contrast between the virtue that demands and the virtue that gives, it is time to dive into the core of Nietzsche's idea. True virtue can only exist where there is fullness. And this is a radical break from everything you have learned so far. You have always been taught that virtue is effort, that being good requires sacrifice, that you need to fight against your impulses, repress your desires, swallow your anger, stifle your will, all in the name of a supposed greater good. But Nietzsche turns all of this upside down. He says, true virtue does not come from effort, it comes from excess. It is not built on self-denial, but on the total affirmation of one's own being. Think of a cup that overflows. That's it. A human being, when whole, when connected with their own essence, their strength, their creation, does not need reasons to give. They give because they cannot contain themselves. They give because they are too alive, because they feel too much, because they are too much. This giving has no agenda. It has no strategy. It is not trying to be accepted. It is not trying to be admired. It simply happens. Like the sun, like the rain, like the art of a true creator. And this requires a brutal change in the way you perceive yourself. Because if you still think you need to strive to be good, then you are still trapped. Because when being is truly full, it does not act out of obligation, it acts out of nature. Nietzsche is proposing an ideal of a human being who does not live out of fear, nor for reward, who does not submit to traditional morality, nor rebelliously reacts against it in a childish way. He proposes the birth of a new type of being, the creator, the one who gives because they are free, the one who acts because they are whole, the one who shines without expecting applause. And perhaps you are feeling discomfort now. Perhaps you are realizing how much of your supposed goodness is still an attempt to please, to protect yourself, to not be rejected. And that's okay. Most people are like that. But now you know. And knowing is the first step to transformation. Because the virtue that gives is not a behavior, it is a state of being. And this state is only possible when you break with the idea that you need to earn your existence. When you understand that there is nothing you need to prove, that you do not need anyone's permission to be yourself, but even this virtue so pure, so authentic, is subject to the laws of life. Nietzsche does not romanticize or idealize. He knows that everything that is born dies, and it is about this impermanence, about the inevitable cycle of life, death and detachment, that we will talk now. Because even the virtue that gives needs to know when to let go. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core ideas and gives you tools to understand yourself more deeply. Link is in the pinned comment. No virtue, no matter how authentic, escapes the cycle of life. Everything that lives dies, everything that blooms withers, and Nietzsche, unlike so many other thinkers, does not try to protect you from this reality. He throws you into it, without cushions, without anesthesia, because it is there, in the acceptance of impermanence, that true freedom begins. Zarathustra, after giving everything of himself, understands that even his virtue needs to die. And there is no sadness in that. There is no despair. There is beauty. There is acceptance. There is wisdom. Because the true creator knows when to stop, knows that even giving needs a pause, that even the sun sets. Nietzsche does not want you to live eternally in a state of blind giving. He wants you to learn to dance with existence, to know how to shine when you are full, but also to know how to withdraw when necessary. Because the being that gives also needs to renew itself, needs to return to the source, needs to die, symbolically, to be reborn with more strength, more clarity, more truth. This cycle is not a weakness. It is a right, a sacred movement. The Creator is not a servant of the world. He does not live giving until he fades away. He gives because he is whole. But when he begins to empty himself, he retreats, he silences, he disappears, because he understands that even giving, if done excessively, becomes contaminated. It turns into addiction. It turns into attachment. It turns into a need to be needed. And here lies the deepest point. Knowing how to give is important. But knowing when to stop giving and accepting the death of what you have created is even rarer. Because the ego wants to eternalize everything, wants to ensure that virtue is remembered, recognized, applauded. But the free spirit knows that this is an illusion, knows that everything true must pass, must flow, must disappear in time, so that something new can be born. Zarathustra does not cling even to his own doctrine. He wants his word to be like a river that pours good and evil over men and then moves on, without getting stuck, without stagnating, without seeking glory. And this image is too powerful to be ignored, because it invites us to look at our lives and ask, what am I trying to keep alive that should have already died? Perhaps it is an identity, a relationship, a purpose that no longer makes sense, or even a way of living, thinking, being, that has already fulfilled its cycle. Nietzsche challenges you to let go, to release, to not cling even to what is purest in you. And this detachment requires something that few have: inner silence, the ability to step back, to return to oneself, to understand that the spirit that gives also needs to withdraw. This is exactly what Zarathustra does next. He departs, he disappears. He returns to isolation not as an escape, but as a rebirth. And it is about this powerful, necessary, and profound withdrawal, about the creative silence, that we will talk now. Because even the strongest need to rebuild themselves in the void. Zarathustra falls silent, and his silence screams. It screams freedom, it screams maturity, it screams detachment. After giving everything, everything indeed, he chooses to leave, not out of weakness, but because he knows that even light needs to dim a little to shine with full force again. And this gesture, this voluntary withdrawal, says more about strength than any display of power. Nietzsche understood a truth that few can bear to face. No one can sustain infinite giving without dying inside. The soul that offers too much without pause, without silence, without returning to the source, ends up dry, bitter, resentful. That's why the authentic creator knows how to withdraw. He doesn't need the stage. He doesn't need the audience. He needs the connection to his own source, and this source can only be accessed in silence. But our culture fears emptiness. It is disgusted by silence. It values noise, performance, exhibitionism. The world wants you to always be present, always available, always giving. And if you fall silent, you are forgotten. If you withdraw, you are judged. If you preserve yourself, you are attacked. But Nietzsche shows you another way. The path of conscious isolation. The disappearance that heals. The absence that regenerates. Zarathustra retreats because he has already given everything he could at that moment. And if you are feeling something similar, if you feel you have nothing more to offer right now, that you need air, space, darkness, then perhaps this is your call to stop. Not out of surrender, but out of clarity, out of wisdom. Because true giving only happens when there is a source overflowing behind it. And here is the most important point. Do not be afraid to disappear for a while. Turn off the world. Silence the outside voices. Listen to what is inside you, even if it scares you. It is in this silence that your real power resides. It is in it that you will understand that you don't need to be useful all the time to be valuable. You are Even when you are not doing, you are worth it, even when you are silent. Now, I want you to write a sentence here in the comments. A simple affirmation, a choice, a commitment to yourself. I choose the silence that rebuilds me. Write that. Make it real. And if you can, read what others have written too. Perhaps you will find someone there going through the same as you. And then, continue. Watch the next video. It is essential. And if you have made it this far, you know, it is not by chance.